Hey, I am Cinnamon Cooney, the Art Sherpa, and today I'm going to show you how to paint Galaxy on Fleek. I'm going to guide you through every part of this painting. So even if you haven't painted before, even if you don't think that you can draw a straight line, I'm going to give you the tools you need to succeed. There's even a no draw option. All you've got to do is get your paint, get your brushes, come back and meet me at the easel right now, and I'm going to show you how you can art. Come on, let's go. So on the easel today, what you see here is an 11 by 14 canvas board. And the colors that I have today are phthalo blue, dioxazine purple, quinacridone magenta, titanium white. This is Australian Sienna, this is yellow ochre, this is Mars black. And here in the center, this sort of milky plop that you see, this is a special product called Acrylic Glazing Liquid Gloss. This helps me glaze my paint and also helps slow down the drying time of my paint. Now here on the Australian Sienna, that can be kind of hard to find. So if you can't find it, a perfect exchange would be Indian yellow, and then after that, cad yellow deep. I have an inexpensive toothbrush for making splatters. I have a soft bodied acrylic paint, which means it's sort of soft and slushy. Craft paint will work if you can't get this. You just want a white paint that you can flick. I also have a 2-inch brush. This is very, very economical. It's stiff white nylon. It's going to help me make wide streaks. And of course, you're going to need a cup of water. Acrylic paint is thinned with water. So if you can't get this, remember, this is made to work with that, and that is free from your tap. Let's start laying in the background. I'm going to give you first success skills so you can paint this today. I'm going to take my 2-inch brush right here, and I'm going to lay in white in the center of the canvas. So I'm going to pull out a little bit of this paint onto this brush, and I'm going to add, for me, I'm going to add glazing liquid. If you don't have glazing liquid, go ahead and just put the tip of the bristles in your water just to get it a little bit flowing for you. So see how the paint is just right there in that first 1/4 inch? That's really all you need to put on your brush. And you'll notice that I'm not going from the center. I'm always working from the outside. I'm going to come in mentally, in my mind, line up the center of this, and I'm going to start painting this white paint right on this white canvas. And now I can't hear you because you're in your home, wherever you are, on your mobile device. And I don't know what you're saying, but I can imagine that you're going, why are you painting white paint on a white canvas? Do I have to paint the whole canvas white? What's happening? Why are you doing that? And the reason that I'm doing that is that she's standing in a column of light. And I want to make sure that the center of my canvas is blended and soft and as bright as possible. So by laying in the white paint first, I'm setting myself up for success. And that's going to be really important in your art journey, is setting yourself up for success. Now with the same brush, I'm going to come over to the Australian Sienna. You use whatever yellow you can get that we talked about. And I'm going to dust just the tip of the bristles with that color. Coming back to the center while this is still wet, and very softly just pull a little bit of this color straight down. Not too much though, because I want it to feel like a column of light. If you get too much of the yellow on there, it won't feel bright enough and she won't feel like she's illuminated. The other trick that you want is you want to let it be streaky. You don't want to take the streaks away, right? And you want them to be vertical. Let's paint in the rest of this background. As I'm painting in more of this background, you can see me loading up right here on the edge. All right, you can see this. And I'm gonna pull out a little of my glazing liquid. You could grab a little bit of your water. All right, I'm gonna load up more of this, and I'm gonna be on the outside edge, putting in this pure golden color. I'm gonna not go in too much to where I tried to put my highlight, because I really want that drama, that effect, and that's all I've got to do to hold it, is to not overpaint. Now, I can't lock my canvas in my easel here without creating a terrible shadow for you guys, and that would interfere with your ability to see what I'm doing, which is why you see me having to hold onto this canvas like I'm wrestling something. And that's all it is. I'm going to, even though I know I'm painting over this with my figure, I'm still going to pull up some paint. That way I'm not worried about having to come back and correct for a little area that doesn't get covered by my figure, by the subject of my painting. Now this time I'm going to show you do it with water. Get a little, just the edge of your bristles in the water, loading your brush. Whenever you hear an artist saying loading your brush, all we're saying is put some paint on your brush. That's what we mean. And come out the outside. Right there. Now you might be wondering, what am I putting my paint on? I get asked that a lot. And I just want to tell you that this is palette paper. It's made for acrylic paint. But you could use like a polystyrene plate if you don't have palette paper. So don't let that stop you. So this is cool stuff, and you can get it at most craft stores and online. I'm just letting this be streaky. Making sure I keep this column right here in the center. Now one thing I can do if I feel like I've overpainted it all is I can wipe the excess paint. You can see how I've wiped it off on my brush. I can come back and get some white, load it on nice and heavily. See how that is, that little bead? And make sure that her dramatic entrance is as dramatic as it needs to be. And also make sure that it's fading out to the outside edges. See, these are success tips. These are little things that will help you succeed at stuff like your background. Another thing that can help you succeed at your background is go ahead and use light pressure with your brush. And when I mean that, I'm pressing very lightly. You don't see me bending the brush incredibly hard. It's just springing. And I might shorten my brush strokes just to create a gradation that's happening here. Making sure I've covered all my canvas. And I'm going back fairly quickly because I know she's going to be over a lot of that. I just want to make sure that all of the canvas has been covered with paint. When you feel you have a nice drama here and a canvas that has been covered beautifully, you can go ahead and either allow that to dry or dry it with a hair dryer. Let's make our DIY transfer paper. So I have here my drawing that I did, and I have it nice and lined so I can really see where her lines are. And if you'll notice when I turn this over, they're a little bit faded, and I've started to put the graphite in. And I'm going to rub graphite back and forth everywhere I have a line. You can go ahead and check out my website for both the traceable and some drawing tips for this painting. Once I have graphite rubbed on all the lines that I'm going to want to transfer onto my canvas, all I'm going to have to do is place this image, tape it down, and trace over the lines on the front. Some tips I want to tell you is that you're going to want to use low tack tape. I have a little bit of low tack tape. And when I say low tack tape, think of the type of tape that you might use if you were painting your home, right? You don't have to use that tape. This is artist tape. Artist tape can be a little pricey. So what I would say is you just want something that isn't going to pull up the paint on your canvas that you worked so hard to create a background for. Another tip for success on tracing is go ahead and affix the drawing down in a couple of places, because once you start tracing, what you don't want is this to move on you. I'm going to use a hard tip pencil. You could use a pen with color in it. Well, that's not going to be with color in it to see where you've been. Any way you want to get this on, but basically you're going to trace over every line and then remove the paper. Let's go ahead and do that now. I think you're going to be really surprised at how easy this is. Okay, now another tip I want to give you about moving forward and having a really successful painting is about the paint you have at home. Like I said, I can't know what you're painting with at home, and there's a lot of varieties of paint. There's a lot of brands of paint, and they all have different properties, pigment, and the ways that they kind of apply to a canvas, even though they're all acrylic, and they will all work with each other. So just in case that you're working with a paint that has a low amount of pigment, in other words, it doesn't really cover one layer easily over the next, I'm going to suggest to you a couple places that you might want to go ahead and actually go back and paint white before you start adding color to it. Because while I'm painting with a heavy body professional paint, you might not be. And I want you to win at your painting, so you're posting it and sharing it and telling all your friends how great you are at art now. All right, let me show you some tricks on succeeding even if you're working with maybe beginner paint or student paint. This kind of brush is called a bright. This is a synthetic filament, which means it doesn't come from an animal or anything living. It's made by man. And I like synthetics because they tend to not overpool in water. They're very resilient with acrylic paint. Acrylic paint can be hard on brushes, and they bounce back in shape really easily. So it's just a lot of things I like about them. This is a number 4 bright. When you're trying to understand something about your brush, you're going to look for the number 4. What kind is it? It's a bright. Ooh, it's firm, perfect acrylic brush. Let's go over to our palette and get a little bit of white paint. I'm going to, as we have in the past, prime that brush with a little bit of water. I'm not going to worry about glazing medium on this because I am trying to just cover. And I'm going to paint in where I have a lot of yellow, right? A little bit of this white because I want her galaxy to be bright. And if you're really brand new to painting, you might not know that yellow can gray out purple. So when you're following along with the tutorial, if you don't know there's a difference between your paint and the instructor's paint, and you don't know that purple and yellow might do that, it could give you a little grief. But we know that can happen here, so I'm going to tell you that it can, so you are really happy with your galaxy dress. Right, so all where it's really, really powerful yellow. Now, if you're worried about remembering where your lines are, you can even get a little of this pink paint if you need it. And just make sure with paint, because this will blend into everything that we're going to be doing later really easily. And just make sure that there's some line or reminder where your little creases were for the fabric to fold out. So go ahead and paint all of that in where it's too dark a yellow with the white paint. Once we have that dress knocked back with a little bit of white, so we know we can paint over it with whatever paint we have and really succeed, we can lay in the skin tone, her gloves, and her hair while we're waiting for that white paint to dry. I'm going to get a slightly smaller brush because as I work in small areas, I want to have more control of where my paint goes, and I don't want it to get away from me. So taking my brush to a smaller size can help me in gaining that control. I'm going to do a very, very simple skin tone, which is my quinacridone magenta and a little bit of my yellow ochre. Now in this case, because she's going to be fair, I'm going to make sure it's a little more pink, right? And add a lot of white. If you'd like her to have a richer skin tone, you can just be more in the yellow ochre with a little bit of quinacridone. That is up to you. It's your world, your canvas. You reflect what you want to see in it. I'm going to add a lot of white to her skin tone, and I'm going to come paint her in. I don't have to worry about where the gloves are going to be because I'm actually going to paint those in, surprisingly enough, a light blue. So I'm just worrying about where she's showing above the dress. Isn't that nice? Just paint her in. Small brush, lots of control. Working on the edge here. You know, you might not have a brush that's as easy to wield as mine. You know, and that's okay. Just remember, a painting is not always about the result. It's about the experience you have while making it. I'm going to paint everything up here in with this, but I'm going to need to come back because she's so beautifully lit and create a little bit of shadow on her and under her face. And an interesting way I'm going to do that is I'm going to offload a little bit of my paint. Whenever I say offload, I mean I'm just kind of wiping it off the brush. Maybe even come and wipe it on my towel. I'm going to get a smidge, just the smallest amount of blue to create this. See, it doesn't even take very much blue. Like you saw how little blue I got. Just a little bit of a cool shadow. And this will be like the work for you to do. Go ahead and work in small amounts. That's another success tip. Work in small amounts of paint when you're having trouble getting your mixtures. That way it doesn't get away from you. Because if you were to take a lot over there, it would take a lot of paint to fix it. And you don't want to have to waste all your paint. I've got a very, very soft blue and it feels like a shadow. I just want the feeling of a soft shadow cast under her chin. And then also right under her luscious hair. Right under there. Isn't that nice when that's casting a shadow? I really like that. So once I have that in, I'm going to rinse out my brush and I can actually paint in the base of my gloves, which is interestingly, I'm just going to take a little more blue. See, that's the amount of blue I'm talking about. It doesn't seem like a lot. I'm going to bring it over to my white and it's going to make like a sky blue. I don't mind if that previous color gets in this because this is a base to my white gloves and is going to help them show. So very carefully paint in what you've drawn or traced in. I like to use the edge of this brush to create a fine line. Fine lines can be challenging when you're new to painting. And I want you to know that it's a balance between your hand pressure, how hard you're pressing down on the brush, how easily the paint is exiting the brush onto the canvas, and the quality of the brush you're painting with. It's balancing those three factors out that give you success at lines. My paint isn't flowing off my brush very well, so I'm going to add a little water and see me go into the cup and then kind of swirl that around a little bit. I don't want it to be crazy wet. I just want to have it flow a little bit better. I could have also used my glazing medium, but right now I want things to dry a little quicker than that. I know, crazy. But I do. I don't have to worry about painting this in perfectly with the blue. This is about creating an undervalue. Also about where knowing things are. I'm very carefully going to paint in my fingers. Fingers give everybody grief. If you're really concerned about the hand or you weren't getting it, is it okay to just put the arm behind her skirt like this one is? Of course that's okay. Again, you're painting your world. So if I'm ever doing something in one of my paintings that you're not really finding that speaks to you, or maybe it's too challenging at this time, and just remember, always say at this time, change it up. Make yourself comfortable. Art is supposed to be your comfortable space, not your uncomfortable space. All right, I'm just putting the paint in everywhere. Remembering to breathe and stay calm. I can see her hand. I like how that looks. And put this down here. Now again, if you didn't like it even at this point, you can go back and paint that white, straighten down the arm, paint it all in, and you're going to be going over with black hair anyways. So it's not hard to change, but if you do decide to change it, make sure that the paint underneath is dry. Acrylic paint is so forgiving when it's dry, but not as much when it's wet. That's better for the blend when it's wet, so, you know, whatever your goal is, that's the important thing. Okay, so this and this in, so I know where my gloves are, make sure I have a nice glove line right here. I'll come back with white later. All right. And I can take this time and this small brush to put in this luscious hair. Now, I really like to use like black and blue together to do black hair, but maybe that isn't your favorite hair color. And I just really want to say to you again, your canvas, your world. It is okay to change up the hair color, and we have more information about hair color. You can find that on the website. Just know that everything in art is possible. You just have to follow your dreams with it. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to take a little of my phthalo blue over to my black. Now, it's been so dry in the studio, I'm going to mist it with water. This is just a little mister that I have for helping me keep my palette from drying out. You know, there's lots of ways to keep your paint from drying out. If you're in ideal conditions, it's not really something you have to worry about, but when are any of us in ideal conditions? I'm going to paint in everything that I had as hair with this base color, the blue and the black. I'm going to use the edge of my brush, right, to keep control. And I always like to show in a painting, one time at least, how I would fix a mistake, right? So right here on the shoulder, I'm going to put a little black mark there, and I'm going to show you how you would fix that. This will be true anywhere in the painting if you have any mistakes. And the first thing I'm going to do to fix it, believe it or not, is to let it dry. Paint this all in. Right now, in relationship to this curl, I want to say something. These can be hard for new people. They're not really hard, but when you're new, they can feel hard. And if you have to, go down even further and get a micro brush to allow you to relax and just work out the curve yourself. Just carefully painting around her. You've got this. You've got this. Again, I'm going to demo the curl. Curling in. Curling in. See that? Coming back around. You can always practice on scratch paper getting this. It can be really hard. Another thing you can do is switch to a round brush. Sometimes people find that easier too. Once you have the hair all laid in and you're really, really happy with it, then you're ready to do the highlights. But before we do the highlights, I want to show you how to fix that boo-boo. Boo-boos can happen anywhere in a painting. They happen to everybody. They happen to me at some point during your painting. They're going to happen to you. And what I want you to take away from this is that nothing can happen in your painting that you can't just let dry, let rest, paint over, and do again. So let me show you how you do that. So we've had this little oopsie that we did right here, and I want to have that go away. And all I've got to do is take my little skin tone right here, come back, now that it's completely dry, mix it back up again, come right over the top. Depending on the paint you're painting with, something like this can take 2 coats. And it looks like, and this is interesting, this is good, this one's going to take 2 coats. I'm going to spot dry it real quick and show you what the second coat looks like. Okay, I've spot dried it, but you can see that it's sort of bled through or showed through, so it's definitely, even with my paint, going to take 2 coats. But again, there's nothing that not at some point couldn't be covered up by acrylic paint. So everything's fixable, everything's repairable. Let's get these highlights into her hair, because I think that's what finishes the hair out and makes this like super gorgeous, super amazing, like what we want to look at, and we really, really love her. I'm going to take a mixture of my black and blue and white and create highlights. You could do it also with a brown highlight or gold highlight. I'm just doing what I prefer. Your canvas, your world. It's okay at this stage to do what is exciting visually to you. I'm mixing the black and blue together. This time I'm letting it be weirdly a little more blue. I'm going to come over and get the white paint. And you can see how it's sort of all marbled and crazy on my brush. I'm going to come very carefully to the inside part here and make a very fine line. One of the things that I do, because I've been painting a long time, is I'm very comfortable making furtive, light lines. See how this is like a dust? How I get that is I've got heavy body paint on a good brush and a light stroke. And that allows me to barely suggest that something is there. So if I want to say that there's a highlighted strand of hair that comes over and ducks behind her shoulder, I can really easily do that. I can also create a highlight down this curl, giving it more dimension and personality. Isn't that nice? Now again, if anything happens that you don't like, wipe off your brush, come back, and you can easily, with just a little bit of black, smooth that out and just make it how you like it. If ever it's just undoable, let it dry, paint it out, and put it back. I'm going to keep adding these highlights all throughout my hair. I'm going to be looking to not put too much in, just enough to imply that light has caught her gorgeous locks and is highlighting it on the way down. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to elongate some of these to imply that there are long tresses that are continuously flowing from one part of her head to another. I'm going to bring a little tress right down here. I'm going to come down and make a swirl. So curving on the edge of my brush and just a swirl. Notice how I'm very comfortable with the streaky nature of that. That's because I know that streaky nature almost implies hair. It's working in my favor. Let's put a little more here. Maybe a little highlight at the top of this curl. Come around. Let it be streaky. Let it be a little bit arty, because that's only going to benefit her. I'm going to bring a little forelock over here to this curl because I feel like it would have one. And I'm going to follow that around, saying, all right, she's got some highlights. And again, this is how I'm liking to express her hair. You could do this with like a bright brown if you wanted to. And gold. Even purple or pink. You know, don't be limited. Be imaginative. I'm going to take this one also behind her shoulder and highlight this fabulous curl very lightly. Let's make a little curving stroke, and another little curving stroke. See, it's super fun. Hair is something you can practice over time, and you don't have to be perfect at today to enjoy painting. But I'm hoping that you're seeing that you had even better and more fanciful hair in you than you knew, which is why I gave her such fanciful hair. Once you're happy with her hair, we'll put in her little face features, and as if it's possible, we're going to go to even a smaller brush. I think it's important to use kind of the right size brush for the job. You know, use a big enough brush for a big area of the canvas and a small enough brush for a teeny tiny little area of the canvas. And if you need to get out glasses to see, you know, whatever you need to do to be comfortable in your creative space, you need to do it. I'm going to get my little brush, tell you about it, and show you what I'm going to do. Okay. So you can see here, this is a number 2 bright, teeny tiny detail brush. Brushes this size are often used in miniature painting and decorative painting. They can be found in a lot of locations, but you can see in relationship to her mouth how small it is, and her nose. You can see that's going to give me a lot of control when I'm trying to paint her out. It's also going to help me when I get into these gloves to create the highlights around the hand. So the first thing I'm going to do is still prime it. I'm going to get it wet, drag off the extra water, get a little bit of this dark color just on the tip of my brush. I don't want a lot because I'm going to apply the smidge of a nose. The less you do, the happier you'll be. I'm going to do just a little bit here and just a little bit here. This just says that there's a little shadow, just a little bit. We're kind of seeing it. Not a lot going on. Maybe a little bit right there, but you don't have to do that part. I'm really comfortable doing the little ball of the nose. If you're not, it's better that you just do the 2 dots. I'm going to rinse out my brush, and I'm going to take my quinacridone, my magenta, whatever your magenta is, over to my purple, and I'm going to make a very, very beautiful yet dark color. Okay, and this is going to be the base of these lips. Very carefully put lips in. Try to think of lips as like an inflated tire. Always try to remember that there's a little ball right here on the top lip, and it curves like a bow. We want to make sure our bow looks nice. I like to give a little upward swing in my lip to imply that she's smiling. Then I'm going to join this full bottom lip with a little curved downward line. Put that in together. Once I have the line in the mouth where I like it, and you're probably very comfortable at this point, like, hey, even if this gets wrong, I can paint it out, take a breath, take a minute, come back to the canvas later and fix it. I'm going to rinse this out really good because I don't want any purple in it, and I'm going to let that paint rest or dry. And I'm going to get some white paint, just pure white paint on this small brush. And very carefully, as I can, on this hand, come up the center of the glove and just paint in her fingers a little bit. I'm leaving the smallest amount of this blue outline here so that it really feels like it's the glove catching a little bit of light. Right? Adding this here and pulling this down a little bit. Just making sure that my fingers feel like they're resting confidently on her hip. She's assessing her room, taking it in, planning her night. That's what she's doing. She's got it in control. Once I have that hand in where I like it, I can always come back and make little adjustments with the purple of the dress to make sure that it looks how I want it to look. And again, hands can be so challenging. They can convey a lot, and in this particular case, I think they convey a lot about her and what she's come to do. But listen, if you had to drop it on down her back, don't ever feel bad about that. That's okay. I'm going to take a little of my magenta out over to my white. I'm going to make a little highlight here. Right where I had the ball of her lip, I'm going to come define that a little bit more. And just at the top, but still leaving some purple peeking out. Can you see how I did that? And then I'm going to come around the curve of her lip. Imagine, you gotta remember that the lips are round. So on the left side, the curve will head left. And then on the right side, the curve will head right. So what I mean is, I'm gonna curve my brush stroke to the left. And then as I go to the right, I curve it. It's subtle, but it makes a difference. I'm gonna rinse off my brush. I'm gonna get a little white paint on there. See how little? Just a smidge amount. I'm going to add just a little highlight to my lip, just to say that these are shiny lips. She's not sporting a matte tonight. See? Another nice little touch that you can do if you feel confident. This is just if you're in a place where you feel really confident about it, is you can take a little bit of the pink and just add it to the top of the nose. Just right there. You can do that, you can do it, not do it, that's up to you. But it's something nice that you can do. And while I've got the little brush, I'm going to make sure I have this here where it's handy. And we're going to start putting in the ombre. That's the basis for the Galaxy dress. How are you feeling? Take a deep breath. This is a great time to look at your water. And if it's dirty, go change it out. Because one of the things that can make colors really muddy that you might not know is dirty water. So go get clean water and come back and meet me right now. Now that we have our fresh water, go ahead and pick up that number 4 bright again, and let's finish out those gloves before we put in the dress, because it occurred to me that we're going to want those on. You know, we got to dress her in the right way. I'm going to take a bead of paint. You can see it's just sort of loaded on the tip of my brush here. I'm going to come to the lower side of her arm and just do a curved kind of stroke up. So I'm playing here and curve up. It's very soft, and what I'm trying to do is kind of imply the direction of her forearm. Then as her upper arm. And then as I'm coming down her forearm, I'm going to even kind of curve like this. See how just that curve implies the shape of this glove? And I'm leaving just a sliver of the blue and coming around the edge of the elbow with a little white highlight. These are not like big deal things to do. It's just that if you've been painting a while, you know you need to do them. And I'm going to paint in a little of the white, just so that just that little crease there, implying the bend of her arm. I'm going to make sure I've got a bead going on my brush still. There it is. I'm going to come from the left side over to the right, doing something similar, but I'll leave a little bit of a shadow of the blue close to her body. See how that creates an implied shape with very little about the shape of her arm? I think that's pretty exciting. Now, I've got my white on my brush, but that's okay because I'm going to be painting her bodice. I'm going to get a little of my quinacridone and a little of my white. It's getting a little bit gummy. Can you see that there? That's because the paint is starting to dry in the heat of my studio. When that happens to you, go ahead and wipe off your brush and get into the fresh paint. It's important. All right, now I've got a good bead right there. I'm going to just paint the upper part of her dress with this gorgeous pink. It's gorgeous. Very carefully. All right, using my brush. This brush is so sharp that I can use the corner. You can always change to your lip detail brush if you're having trouble making corners or curls. It's something you can do to make things easier. Coming around here, just making sure I'm keeping these curves intact. I can do the same thing on her bodice that I did on the arm by doing a brush stroke that's curved to imply the shape. We call that an implied line in our implied texture. We're implying. Implying. And then as I'm coming down, I can start curving these to the direction we might be seeing. Isn't that fun? Very galactic. Now I'm going to start grabbing some of my blending medium, some of my glazing medium here. because my paint is drying out so much. And you can see why in my studio it's super necessary. And if it gets too bad, I have to change paint. And I hate to have to waste the paint. You can't reactivate acrylic. If you're brand new and your friend talked you into this painting and you're just sitting there wondering what is going on, you know, first of all, know that that's normal. And two, know that acrylic paint doesn't reactivate the way that, say, a watercolor might or an oil might. Once it's dry, it's pretty much down. Now, if you get paint on your hands or your clothes or some part of your house, you can get it back up with rubbing alcohol. But you shouldn't use rubbing alcohol on your canvas. I do like to use it sometimes on my brushes if I accidentally forget them and let paint dry on them. Just painting carefully around my fingers. Remember to be easier with yourself on projects. Don't be really critical or hard on yourself. All right, once I have this nice pink happening here, I can start blending in the next layer. So I can take a little of this pink, I can add some dog's-earing to it. Can even get a little white to help that really show. And it's struggling. Get into my blending medium to help it. And you know, I think I'm going to put out some fresh paint. And this is, I'm glad you're seeing this with me because this could be happening to you. My studio is hot and dry. And because it's hot and dry, it's impacting my paint. So one thing I can do is tear off my palette sheet. I hate to let it go, but once paint begins to cure, if it's not reconstituting with water, it can be important to put it back out again. So I know I'm going to need a little quinacridone for my dress still. I'm not going to put out as much paint because I won't need all the colors again. I'm going to put out a little dog's name. And I'm going to put out a little of my phthalo blue. I've got lots of tips on how to prevent this. They just don't work when we're filming. They work when I'm just painting, but they're not good tips for filming. You can check out the website if you want more information about that. I'm going to go ahead and mist just to prevent that. Rinse out my brush. And just start trying to get that mixed again. See how easier the purple is pulling out? When you buy acrylic paint, it should be like warm butter. It should not be like cottage cheese. Sometimes, you know, people will say to you, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. That's how it always is. It is not. That's not how it is. That means it started to cure in the tube. Now, it can separate where some of it is clear. I'm going to put out a little of my blending medium. Where some of it is clear and some of it has pigment, but it reconstitutes easily. That's separation, and that can happen in some brands of acrylic paint. Not all brands does it happen in, but some it will. And that is not a problem, and you can just sort of shake up, squeeze up the tube, and fix that. But if it's like cottage cheese, and it's gummy, and it's sticky, and it comes out, and you're like, ooh, then you got something going on with the paint you gotta think about. I'm gonna get a little white onto my brush. Adding that little streak there, isn't that nice? And you can see how with the thinness of the colors, it can help to have this here. If you feel like your bodice is a little streaky, another thing that you can do is come back with the quinacridone and a little bit of white. Just go ahead and hit that pink like right over again. Don't worry about it. Whatever you got to do to get a nice result. Sometimes things take a second coat. There we go. See how nice that is? Now I have beautiful coverage. Just take that around. And that's letting me blend into my purple a little bit. And that's going to give me a nice ombre. And what we want at the end of the day is a nice ombre. So I'm not worried about the little creases here yet. I'm still working this. And as I'm coming here, I will get a little of my Dog's-Nine, a little white, and I'll blend these two areas together. How acrylic blends is entirely about wet paint blending into wet paint. There we go, adding some nice blending medium so it stays pretty agreeable about that. So in acrylic paint, it's just about, is it wet, is it dry? And having it dry at the right time and having the paint still be wet at the right time. I'm cutting on the edge of my brush just to, I like that line and I want to make sure it's a very nice line. Line in painting is important. Just painting this all in with purple. You can do this. You've got this. Lots of people learning to paint right now. You can totally be one of them. Just let those worries go away. Blend the paint together. So I'm going to get a little purple and a little pink and ooh, a little white. And I haven't really blended them together on the palette. And I'm going to just sort of streak those together, creating a little bit of a highlight in the blend. Doesn't that look nice? There we go. Getting very galactic up in here. Now, I'm going to do the purple and the blue down here for the edge of this. And what I like to do is take the phthalo blue and the Dog's-Nine purple together, a little more to the purple than the blue. Sometimes I like to add a little white to it. And one thing you can do is turn your painting upside down. Sometimes it's really hard to paint the edge of a canvas. But since this isn't critical for you to see the shaping of it, I feel like I can flip it over and also show you that you can flip it over. Because this makes what I've got to do here a lot easier. And are you making your art experience easier? That's just something I want to ask you. Harder or easier? And I'm blending this back and forth. You can see that. Isn't that fun? Getting that nice blend. If you're getting edges or sharp lines or an effect you don't like, that's probably about the paint drying on you too quickly. And you might have to go back over and do a second layer to get the blend. And I will make a hard edge that you can see, like right here. So say you had a hard edge like that you didn't like, you know, where you weren't getting the blend. And I'll show you how you could fix that. You can fix anything in acrylic painting, anything you're doing. Remember, everybody, you're probably doing 3 things better in your painting than you know, and obsessing on one thing that you think you're doing wrong that isn't a big deal. Number 1 thing students do, miss the 3 things they were brilliant at and obsess over one thing that wasn't a big deal. Kind of like that in life too, isn't it? Obsess over the thing that's not a big deal and miss the good things going on. So you can see that I'm getting this nice soft blend, but a lot of that is about the paint still being wet. Just keeping that going right there. I'm trying to cover it. Notice that I'm stroking my brush strokes to sort of go with the flow of the dress. That helps create a sense of flow. That really does. All right, there you go. So what if you had an area that wasn't blended like right there? I'm going to dry it so I'm like right where you'd be. This is one of the reasons why I really like glazing medium, because it lets me do some very particular things. And one of them is repair something like this. By being a glaze, even if my acrylic paint is dry, it gives me the opportunity to start creating a blended feeling when I need it. So now, look, can't even see where that hard edge is. Feels blended. I'm just softly even doing a dry brush. This is why that's a product I recommend to have in your kit to help you out. All right, I am going to now paint in this little crease and this little crease. This crease right here is just the purple and the white. So let's put that in. Get that painted nice and in. Purple and white. It's great if you can let it be streaky. If you can allow it to be streaky, I would totally recommend it. It implies fabric flowing behind her. Delicate light fabric. Follow the curve of that. Next one can be a little of the white and pink. Right here, see that? All right, now we're just painting that in. Giving ourselves a nice little edge between these two. We just want them to feel like there's some sort of pleated couture detail to this dress that's flowing off the back. All right. That looks pretty beautiful. I like to check it when I flip it over. See how it's doing. See if I have any boo-boos to repair. I see where like a little paint got on my glove. I can come back right now and just fix that little boo-boo right there on that finger. Don't have to stress about that. Right? Don't have to stress about that. Now I've got to do my interesting little sparkle effect. So I'm going to put out this soft-bodied paint. I don't always like to thin white paint with water to make it soft-bodied for this, because what can happen is this long sort of string splatter, which isn't what you want. You want little dots. And so in this particular case, you know, again, everything is where it is and you are where you are. And if you're thinning your white paint with water, that's where you're at. Be sure and do some test splatters first, right? That way you're not splattering on the piece that you've just labored 6 hours for, but on some piece of paper you can just let go. But I highly recommend you getting soft body paint. And remember, soft body paint just means it doesn't have the fillers in it and isn't holding the brush stroke, and that's generally the paint you see in craft bottles. And of course, my favorite is the golden fluid. But you use what you can use. Always remember, with your paint, get the best materials that your budget allows for. Don't stress your budget though, because that ruins your painting experience. So what I'm doing, how I load my brushes for splatters, I like to kind of brush the teeth of my canvas. I do these little swirlies. They get sort of loaded in there but not glomped. And I do this a lot, so I'm not as worried about getting a test. And I'm going to do a light splatter, which means I'm not going to flick particularly hard on the bristles. And by not flicking too hard, I don't get splatter as many places that I might not want it. There's going to be some oversplatter. Just imagine that there's just glitter everywhere. She's so glittery, it's going everywhere. Because it's when you focus the sparkles that her galactic spectacularness will be revealed, right? I like to put them a little heavier in the skirt. You know, you can experiment with the different ways you can flick on the brush. What you want is to make it seem like there's some sort of sparkling afoot. Get it where you like it. If there's something that you don't like where it's over here, in a way you don't like, you can just go back with that glaze and the yellow and paint it out. Definitely don't forget to rinse out your trusty toothbrush. Have to dry this really well right now, because I have to rest my hand on the canvas when I'm making the stars. If I don't rest the hand on the canvas, my hand's really unsteady. And if the paint's wet, almost smear it everywhere. So this is an important stage to make sure my painting is dry before I finish her off. Once you know she's dry, it's time to put in the stars. I'm going to say that right here, I'm going to show you this right here. This is a detail brush. It is a very small brush. It comes to a very fine point. In fluid paint, it's going to help me do this sparkle effect fantastically. If you really, really can't get a fine brush, right, here's another example of another fine brush, right? This would work too. I've seen people really succeed with a toothpick. So I'm going to just come over here, and it might be a good time to actually get clean water again, but I'm going to come over here and just get my white paint, and I'm going to just take it on the tip of my brush here, right? I'm going to come into the bodice, and I'm going to pick a spot, maybe in upper here. I wouldn't go right there and there. That's going to create a problem you're not going to like. Go upper, and I'm going to just do a dot, and then I'm going to do some radiating sparkle lines around. Can you see how that's a sparkle? Sparkle to sparkle. Maybe I'll put a little dot right there. This is one that's caught the light. So she's in some sort of strobing that's catching some of the gemstones, some of the bling on this fabulous galactic on fleek dress. I'll put a little sparkle right over here. We're just trying to say she's got sparkles. Once you take these, so how, again, I'm going to show you one more time. You make a little dot. I like to make a little short upward line, downward line, to the side, and then some in the diagonals. Okay? Do that all over her dress, how you like it. Make some of them bigger, make some of them smaller, make this one bigger. This one's caught a brighter bit of light. Okay? Let's sparkle her up. Wow, she is pretty bedazzled, and hopefully yours is bedazzled too. But remember, take this to a place that makes you happy. If you need more sparkles, sparkle more. If you need less, sparkle less. This is a good time to sign the painting. I always like to sign the painting in a way that integrates to what I've already done. I don't just generally sign in the lower right hand corner. I like to put my signature somewhere interesting, but you know you can write your signature on the back or anywhere you want. Your canvas, your world, my canvas, my world. I'm going to sign my painting now. I like my signature. It means that I've had a really good time, taking some time for myself, giving back to my creativity and my imagination. Just something that's hard to do in this world these days, but I've made a little time for that. Hopefully you made a little time for that and discovered that you were a lot more creative than you knew. Hopefully you're going to be photographing that and sharing that everywhere because you're so proud of what you did, and I really hope you're proud of what you did. I loved spending time with you. If you come back to spend time with me again, it was good to see you again. I am excited to share the next painting with you, so I really want to see you there. Keep those brushes and paints around. I know I'm going to come up with a project you're going to love. I want to see you at the easel really soon. Bye-bye!